Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening to you wherever you may be. Lucky Strike's blowing smoke rings at you from the studios of Comfortably Zoned Radio. And it's time for Dodgers baseball, a tale of two cities from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. I'm your host, Peter Trunk, and my co-host, as always, is Ron Rabinovitz. Ron, how are you?
Hi. Great, Peter. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you, my friend.
Great.
Everything
Great.
okay out there in the Twin Cities?
Minneapolis, it's great. I was down at Target Field today. I spoke to 250 kids about Jackie Robinson. It was a great reception, had a great time.
How many times this week, or should I say this month, have you gone to Target Field and spoken to a group about Jackie?
I think it's about 7 times. And I've got
Okay, the reason I ask you that is because I see all those wonderful photographs that you post on your Facebook page with all those kids raising their hand to ask questions and stuff. It's really inspiring.
Thank you. Thank
very
you.
Cool.
I'll be posting some more tonight. I'll be posting some more tonight.
Excellent.
Yeah.
As I understand it, we have a very special guest on the radio program tonight, and I'm going to hand it over to my partner, Ron Rabinovitz. And Ron, take it away and tell us all about it.
Thank you. We're very fortunate to have Professor Joseph Dorinson. Joe and I are very dear friends. We've been friends for many years. We actually got to know each other because of a documentary that the MLB Network did called Letters from Jackie. And Joe did a wonderful job on that show. He's a professor at Long Island University. He's written some wonderful books, several of them. I can mention a couple. Jackie Robinson, Race, Sports, and the American Dream. He wrote a book about Paul Robeson and a book about the Brooklyn, the elusive dream. And, excuse me. And he's I just choked. Pardon me.
Gesundheit.
Thank you. So I'd like to introduce Joe Dorinson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ron. It sounds like you're doing the death scene from Camille.
Either that or he had too many lucky strikes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was drinking some water and it went down the wrong pipe.
Oh, no, I hate that.
Yeah, well, I'm fine. Well, Joe, I'm so glad to have you on the show.
I want to thank you for making me famous, Ron. Participating in that wonderful documentary gave me cachet, and I've shown it in class because I teach a course in sports history at Long Island University, Brooklyn, where I've taught for more than 50 years. And the students loved it.
Great. That's wonderful. Well, you did such a great job. It was fabulous.
Right.
Such a wonderful job.
Right. Let me help you out a little bit while you collect your voice.
Yeah, thank you.
My first exposure to Ebbets Field was 1945. I was about 8 years old and part of a young group of kids who lived in the low-income projects, the first one built by Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And it was an August day. The Dodgers were playing the Boston Braves. They won 8-6, I remember that. And I was sitting in the center field bleachers with my friends, all of whom were poor. And the thing that struck me and remained with me forever is that playing center field was a Jewish ball player named Goody Rosen. And that gave me a tremendous lift because I wasn't aware that Jews were actually playing baseball. I had heard vaguely of Hank Greenberg, but this was home. And he actually hit over 300 that year. And it was a great experience, and I was hooked forever.
That's great.
How do you like that?
That's great. Are you still a Dodger fan?
Was the war over?
Well,
was the war over when you attended that game?
No, here's my confession. I come from a dysfunctional family. My father was a Giant fan.
Oh, no.
Having grown up in Jersey City, where the Giants minor league team played. My mother, because of her politics, she was a pinko. She wanted to integrate America, so she rooted for the Dodgers. And I, mea culpa, because I love Joe DiMaggio and I love the pinstripe uniforms, I became a Yankee fan.
Oh, no.
So please forgive me. I share a
okay.
dubious distinction with former Mayor Giuliani, who was also a Yankee fan in Brooklyn, but his reasons were different from mine. The Yankees attracted the Italian Americans because the Yankees were the first major league team to get Italian Americans in their lineup, including the great superstar Joe DiMaggio. They started with Tony Lazzeri. They followed up with Frank Rossetti, both from California, and then followed up with Joe DiMaggio, who was from California. And the other Italian players were drawn from St. Louis, the Hill area, where Yogi Berra and Joe Garagiola came from. But getting back to the Dodgers, what struck me about the Dodgers was their multicultural background of the players, which represented the culture of Brooklyn. And to me, Brooklyn is an extraordinary place, and it's gone through a roller coaster over the years, from a hot borough to a declining borough, and now Brooklyn's hot.
It's hot again. Yes, it is.
Yes. And when I grew up in Brooklyn, there were only two skyscrapers. One, the Bank of Williamsburg, which is located at Hanson Place, near the yards where the Brooklyn Nets team, the basketball team, plays, where Walter O'Malley wanted to build the second Ebbets Field. And the skyscrapers are now blotting out the sky in Brooklyn, thanks to the real estate boom.
Sure, that's wonderful. I've heard a lot of good things about Brooklyn. That it's really
but when the Dodgers left, they left a vacuum in our vital center, and there's a blame game going on among historians and newspaper writers and fans. Who's the culprit? According to Pete Hamill, the three most evil men in the world of recent vintage were Hitler, Stalin, and Walter O'Malley. And there's this wonderful quote from a film that I covered and wrote about, Brooklyn Dodgers, The Ghost of Flatbush. If you have these three men in a single room and you have one gun with two bullets, who do you shoot first? And according to Pete Hamill, you shoot Walter O'Malley twice.
That's great. That's great.
And let me build on that for a moment.
Sure.
The Dodgers, as a team, created a unique, unifying symbol for Brooklyn, which was composed to this day. Brooklyn has more foreign-born immigrants than any other city or borough in the country.
Really?
And
Still does,
and what Brooklyn did, even in its bad times, was create a mecca for these people to come together. It was a unifying symbol. And when the Dodgers moved to L.A., they provided that same symbol because L.A. is a fragmented bunch of suburbs minus a transit system. One of my college classmates wrote the definitive book on L.A. His name is Robert Fogelson. He's a professor at MIT. And he explains very, very clearly why L.A. grew so big and never developed the kind of unity that Brooklyn ultimately developed. And the Dodgers provided, as a baseball team, the unifying principle in both cities. Now,
that's something.
The blame, however, I think belongs with O'Malley, with a somewhat 40% of that blame going to Robert Moses, who was a brilliant but imperious dictator who tried to destroy New York City because he preferred the suburbs. I can give you many examples. What he did was, first he destroyed and undermined Coney Island by shifting much-needed funds to rebuild the boardwalk. He shifted towards Long Island because, by the way, he was a racist. He wanted Jones Beach to become the new Coney Island. And he wanted to keep poor people, particularly blacks, out of Jones Beach because you had to have a car to get there. You had to pay a fee to get into the park. And it was clear that Moses preferred the suburbs. He built the Long Island Distressways, which today are parking lots, not unlike the freeways in California. And he deliberately undermined Brooklyn. He wanted the Brooklyn Dodgers to move in 1957 to Flushing Meadow, where we held the two World Series, World's Fair, 1939, which I attended as a 3-year-old, and the one in 1964, both of which were money losers. So he thought that he would sort of recoup his investment, or the investment of federal and state funds in a new park there. And O'Malley, to his credit, said, how could we call them the Brooklyn Dodgers if they play in Queens? A problem that the New York football giants didn't seem to incur when they moved to the Hackensack swamps of New Jersey. So what I would conclude is that sports is a business. Contrary to the terrible Supreme Court decision that Oliver Wendell Holmes signed on to, which argued, I think the vote was 8-1, that in the 1920s, that sports is not a business, but is immune from antitrust provisions.
Interesting.
I'm doing
Very
most
interesting.
of the talking. Why don't you
That's okay.
Questions?
That's okay. Peter, what do you think of all this? I mean,
well, I'm very glad that our guest is not one of those revisionists of history that now want to put all the blame on one Robert Moses. We know as true Dodger fans that the blame is totally on, in my mind, totally on Walter O'Malley, and only because of his very rich family in the last 20, 25 years have they gotten him, A, into the Hall of Fame, and B, changed a lot of people's mind with a couple of books and what have you about how bad Robert Moses was and how Robert Moses drove the Dodgers out of Brooklyn, and all poor Walter O'Malley wanted was a fair shake. And, of course, that's total horse manure. And,
I totally agree with your assessment.
Okay, thank you. And like I said, I'm glad that you are on our side of the fence on that.
Right. I even took issue with my mentor at Columbia University. Kenneth Jackson was a brilliant historian, prize-winning historian, gathered a conference to reevaluate Moses. And I took exception to this revisionist approach because I believe Robert Caro wrote the definitive demolition of Robert Moses as the empire builder. I could point to many of his faux pas. Not only did he neglect Coney Island, but he tried to build a bridge across Lower Manhattan and destroy the Italian-American community traditions there and was foiled by Jane Jacobs. He tried to, he destroyed the Bronx, in my judgment, by building the Cross-Bronx Expressway that drove a wedge through affordable housing, which my aunt resided in, and I lived in on weekends. So I have a vivid recollection, not only as a scholar, but as someone who lived through that experience. And
Sure.
the tragedy of the Dodger departure is that they were making more money in 1950s, thanks to Jackie Robinson and all the other great players that joined the team afterwards, Don Newcomb, Roy Campanella, Sandy Amoros, and, of course, Ralph Branca and Carl Perillo and the Duke, Billy Cox, all these wonderful players. The Dodgers were earning more money, so it was the cupidity, the greed that pushed O'Malley. He resented the fact that Lou Perini moved the Braves from Boston to Milwaukee and was making money, and, of course, then moved this money grubber, it was moved to Atlanta. So he saw gold in them Dar Hills. Gold was discovered in California in the 19th century, and he found it in Chavez Ravine, which, of course, is something that we should never forgive or forget. Can I confide in you something that may not go over with some of your listening audience? When I co-hosted the Jackie Robinson Conference in 1997, I was given a letter by one of my colleagues who actually played for the Dodger farm team and was instrumental in building Vero Beach as a training center for Jackie's spring training to avoid segregation and its ugliness. He gave me a letter to Peter O'Malley. Peter O'Malley did not appear at this meeting at Dodger Stadium, but Tommy Hawkins, the then public relations director, did. And he said, I can't give you any money to help you in your conference. And I asked, why not? He said, it's because your keynote speaker, Roger Kahn, insulted the O'Malley family. And I said, can you explain? And he did. He said, Roger Kahn was brought out to California to honor Jackie at the stadium, and he gave an interview to the L.A. Times. And he was asked, what did he think of the O'Malley family? He said, and then the quote was in the paper, Walter O'Malley was a scoundrel, but Peter O'Malley doesn't have the brains to be a scoundrel. So that was published, and I got the brunt of that insult. But what Tommy Hawkins gave me was a poem that he wrote, an ode to Jackie Robinson, which appears in the beginning of my Robinson book, which ultimately was far more valuable than money. It was a poem honoring Jackie and his great contributions. And Tom Hawkins and I became friends, although recently we lost touch. He, when the Dodger management changed, when the O'Malleys sold the team, Tom Hawkins was relieved of his duties and he moved to Florida. But he was apologetic. And I remember that encounter, that the O'Malleys never forgot. They're like the Bourbon Kings of France. They never learned anything from the past, and they never forgot anything.
Right.
So,
that's true.
I agree with your assessment.
True.
Yeah.
And I don't think Jackie had any love for the O'Malleys either, especially not Walter. He and Walter didn't get along at all.
Yeah, Walter knew that he was a Ricky man.
Right,
there's another anecdote that I came across in my research, and I'd like to share it with your listening audience.
Please.
You know, Robinson was a teammate of Sandy Koufax. Sandy Koufax was signed as a bonus baby in 1955. And Walter Olson, whom Robinson didn't like very much, and it was mutual, went to Olson and said, why aren't you pitching Koufax? He pitched a 2-hit shutout and didn't get into a game for the other 6 weeks. And my surmise is that it was part of this Ricky O'Malley animus, and maybe a touch of anti-Semitism involved.
Sure.
Because,
Very well be.
because Koufax had great talent. And he was wild, admittedly, but if you don't pitch in the
on a regular basis,
interval,
right?
You don't, and you can't be, because of the bonus rule, you can't be farmed out to the Montreal Royals or the St. Paul team or whatever. So, in a sense, it was fascinating. And the surviving, I think there are 4 surviving Dodgers, 3 of whom are pitchers: Carl Erskine, Don Newcomb, and Sandy Koufax. And the 4th is Ron, you probably know who the 4th was.
The 4th one,
Roger Craig.
The 4th.
Oh,
Roger Craig.
Right. So
That's
4
right.
pitchers.
They're all pitchers. They're all pitchers.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So old soldiers never die, neither do old pitchers.
That sounds that way.
They just fade away, like
They just fade away. Yeah, right. Oh, that's so funny. That's so true.
There's something I don't understand, though. I don't understand something.
What's that?
Why would Walter Alston not pitch Sandy Koufax that would have anything to do with Branch Rickey? If Koufax signed with the Dodgers in '55, Rickey was far gone from the Dodgers in 1955.
Yes, that's a good point. The idea of this rookie, who never had any farm training, training in the farm system, and for some reason, Alston, until they got to L.A., did not trust Koufax. And it was Robinson, and that's the main point of bringing it up. Robinson came to Koufax's defense or offense, and he felt that he should be given a chance. Now, at one point, things got so heated that Alston and Robinson almost went to fisticuffs.
Yes, they did. You're right.
Yeah. That is documented.
Yes, it is.
So,
yes, it is.
There's also
that was not the only time. That was not the only time in my lifetime that I can remember a Dodger manager, for whatever reason or reasons, refused to pitch a certain pitcher. In 1952,
Ralph Branca also told me, I interviewed him. In fact, I was supposed to do a paper for Cooperstown, but my cancer intervened just last week. Ralph Branca told me that in 1946, when he was basically a rookie, and the Dodgers were gaining on the St. Louis Cardinals, and they tied him on the last day of the season, he was really coming into his own. But Charlie Dressen, the pitching coach, told him that he wanted Branca to pitch batting practice. And Branca, probably a little arrogant, or maybe felt that it wasn't his role, he said, I don't want to pitch batting practice. And therefore, both DeRocher and Dressen kept Branca out of key games. I think he finished with a 3-1 winning and loss percentage, but he had a very low earned run average, and he was in his prime. And the very next year, in 47, he won 21 games, I believe. He lost 10. So he was the Dodger ace, and he could have made a difference. And he also felt he felt that he didn't like Dressen when he became manager, and by the time Alston came around, I think Branca was traded away.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Ralph Branca told me that at a card signing show years ago that the Dodgers' worst mistake. This is according to Ralph Branca.
Go ahead.
The Dodgers' worst mistake was getting rid of Barney Burt Schotten and hiring Dressen in the first place. He said Dressen was the type of guy who, if the Dodgers' record was, for instance, let's just say the Dodgers' record was 96 and 57.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dressen was the kind of guy who said, I won 96 games.
Right.
The Dodgers lost 57 games.
Huh. Yeah.
He was a narcissist, not unlike our current.
Yeah.
Well, he thought he was the second coming of Leo DeRocher and tried his darndest to prove that he was brighter than DeRocher at every turn. But the story that I was thinking of in my lifetime about a manager happens to be Chuck Dressen in 1952, when in the beginning of the season, Clem Labine had hurt himself. He hurt his lower back, and the Dodgers sent him down to the minor leagues, where in the hot weather, all of a sudden, he got healthy, and his ball was hopping, and he was throwing hard, and he was doing very, very well, and they brought him back, and Labine couldn't believe that he wasn't being used in the second part of the 52 season. And he went to Dressen and he said, come and watch me pitch batting practice. Duke Snider went to Dressen and said, I can't hit this guy in batting practice. You got to start using him. And Dressen, the know-it-all, said, he'll play in 1953, next year. He's not ready yet. And of course, we all know that in the 52 series, the Dodgers were up 3-2.
That's correct.
Going back to Brooklyn. And in the 6th game, Duke Snider's home run, they were up on the Yankees in the 6th game. They were winning the game late in the game, like 7th inning or 6th inning. They were winning 1 or 2-0 on Snider's home runs. And he never used Labine. All he went to was Joe Black. He went to Joe Black morning, noon, and night, Dressen did. And, of course, he ruined him. He pitched him until his arm, he couldn't even comb his hair.
He did the same with Labine, using him both as a starter and a reliever without concern for him. Remember, in 51, after Thompson beat Branca 3-1 in the first playoff game, it was Labine who pitched a wonderful shutout, 10-0, to win the second game. So, he didn't use Labine wisely, and he thought he was a genius, and it turned out he was something less.
Right. Yes. Right. That's true.
Actually, in his autobiography, Branca says he didn't care for Schotten either. He felt that managers like Connie Mack and Bert Schotten, who dressed in civvies, really didn't have the kind of aggression. He liked DeRocher, despite their
he'd run out on the field and back up his players, right?
Yes, he backed up his players. He also felt that if DeRocher remained at the helm in 47, Jackie would have had an easier time facing Ben Chapman and the other bigots. DeRocher would have been out there using his fists and his verbal skills.
Alacrity.
Yeah.
I happen to believe that. I believe that. For all the things that you can say negative, and we could be on the air for another hour and a half, all the negative things you could list about Leo DeRocher. There was one thing that you could always count on, and that was that Leo would back you up. He'd run out on that field and back you up, the drop of a hat, and of course Schotten never went out on the field. Never.
That's right.
Never.
In fact, people who play for DeRocher claim that he was always maybe 2 or 3 innings ahead of his opposing manager. He had a wonderful scheme of things. He knew how to marshal his players, and of course, look what he did with the Giants, who were basically inferior to the Dodgers in personnel, and he was able to beat them in that crucial 51, and of course in 54 again.
I noticed that Walter Olson also was not one that really backed up his players. I mean, he very rarely fought with the umpires. He very rarely came out there. And I think Jackie used to get ticked off about that.
Sure.
He didn't defend his players. And they used to have...
He was a house man. Remember, he signed these 1-year contracts.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And even though he had gained enough prestige and credibility as a manager, he was always under the control of the O'Malleys.
Right, exactly.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that. Another thing about Chuck Dressen was that Chuck Dressen, unlike other managers, instead of taking players into his office, closing the door, and telling them what for, he would do it in front of the entire team.
Right.
Okay, so he would put everybody's dirty laundry right out there. And Snyder told the story, Duke Snyder told the story that there was a incident in the Dodger clubhouse with, I'm trying to remember the pitcher's name. There was a pitcher that the Dodgers had in the 50s, and Dressen just absolutely tore into him in front of the entire team, and the guy never became anything. And Snyder thought that was horrible because, and Snyder liked Dressen. Snyder told me at a card show once that his favorite manager was Dressen. But he said it was a terrible thing to do to a rookie. He laced into this rookie Dodger pitcher who lost his confidence, totally lost his confidence, and never could get anybody out, and of course was washed out of baseball very quickly.
Was it Chris Van Kuyk?
No, it wasn't. But it was that genre.
Okay.
It was that genre. It wasn't Chris Van Kuyk, but it was that genre. And Dressen told Dick Young, the sports writer that covered the Dodgers for all those years, he told him, proudly told Dick Young, you know something, Dick? I never read a book in my life. and Dick Young looked at him incredulously and he said, what? He never read a book in my life, Dressen said.
No kidding. Unbelievable.
Well, he should have run for president of the United States.
There you go.
You're right.
There you go.
You're right.
There you go.
Oh, my God.
But that sums up Charlie Dressen. Charlie Dressen knew everything. You didn't know anything. He knew everything. And he refused to read a book. He didn't, I got this far without reading a book. I'll get, blah, 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 this and that. And,
let me ask you a question. How do you believe the Dodgers had the strongest lineup, perhaps in two leagues, hitting, and yet they had very few left-handed batters? What accounted for the preference? I mean, you had that screen, and which I pass very often when I go up Bedford Avenue, the wall, and yet you had an overwhelming lineup with right-handed batters.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Can you explain it?
If I can explain it inside out and backwards, I will. Upside down also. There were many seasons, and I'm talking not one season, but 2, 5, maybe 5 seasons, where left-handers never beat the Dodgers. In a whole season of baseball, 154 games.
Right. That's why Bob Cassava pitching in the World Series is a big surprise. A junk ball wins, helps the Yankees win 2 World Series against the Dodgers.
And in the World Series, Whitey Ford and Tommy Byrne, the Dodgers beat them in games 1 and 2 in 1956. The Dodgers were inundated with right-handed hitting, except for Snyder. Many people say the reason why Duke Snyder is in the Hall of Fame is because of just that. He faced all right-handed pitching. Okay. The baseball was different back then. There were fewer trades. There were absolutely no players playing out their contract and becoming free agents and going elsewhere. No. So what the Dodgers brought up through their system, what the Dodgers brought up through their farm system was what they brought up through their farm system. And it happened to be a Hodges, a Campanella, a Reese, a Ferrillo. These right-handed batters just kept coming up, and Snyder was the happiest guy in Brooklyn because the Dodgers never faced left-handers. Like I said before, I think there was a span of 2 or 3 years where only one left-hander even completed a game. This is back when everybody completed games. Only one left-hander completed a game against the Brooklyn Dodgers in like 3 straight summers, and he lost.
Right.
And he lost.
The only position was left field where Hermansky, you had Cal Abrams. Now,
Amoros.
Yeah, Amoros. I interviewed Abrams and his wife, actually May, more so than Cal after he died. And they also claimed anti-Semitism. They claimed, for example, in 51, after the infamous 50 burnout at home plate, he was hitting 470 in April, and he didn't get into a game after that. Now, Abrams was a left-hand batter who often hit to left field. He was that kind of slice hitter. But when he played Pirates under Rickey, he hit 15 home runs one year, and Forbes Field was cavernous. So I think maybe they had something that people like Abrams deserved more of a chance to prove himself.
Sure.
Absolutely. Two things about Abrams. Well, I have two answers to that. And they're
Go ahead.
both, one of them is total opinion. The first one is that Cal Abrams was buried in his Dodger uniform.
That's right. Fort Lauderdale.
The second one is my opinion. I do not think that the Dodgers playing in Brooklyn would ever, in that genre of 47 to 57, would ever be anti-Semitic in any way, shape, or form. Because Brooklyn, let's face it, was a landslide. Jewish. There were Jews everywhere in Brooklyn, and they loved their Dodgers.
That's right, and that's why Jackie Robinson could not have made it in any other city. I believe you're right.
Well, that's
right.
But
that's why they weren't anti-Semitic. And Cal Abrams' wife, if she told you that, I would have to disagree with her. I should think the Dodgers would be hot to trot to have a Hank Greenberg type player on their team. Just like now,
Woody Rosen, the person I cited as my hero in 45, was traded away to the Giants the next year. And in a doubleheader, he got 6 hits against his former team. So I would suggest that maybe, yes, they didn't go out of their way to get a Jewish player. Look, Sid Gordon up in Brooklyn, but he was signed by the Giants. And there were many other Jewish players. The Giants...
Didn't he play for the Pirates, too?
Yeah.
Gordon? Yeah.
No, he played for the Braves. He was traded, in that Eddie Sankey trade. But the point is, the ethnicity, yes, the fan base was very Jewish. I remember, and I mentioned this in my writing, that the Jewish fans would call out to Jackie in Yiddish, Yankel, give us a klop, hit the ball. Referred to him as Yankel, as one of their own, because Jews felt an identity with Jackie. He was fighting our battle for integration, for instance.
Exactly.
That's why I say still strongly that the Brooklyn Dodgers held no animosity whatsoever against Jews. I'm sure they would have welcomed a Jewish star with open arms in Brooklyn, just like today, where they have had big stars out in L.A. that are Mexican, Fernando Valenzuela, among others.
When you talk about L.A., when they won the World Series against the White Sox, it was 2 Jews, pitcher and catcher.
Right.
The relief pitcher.
Norm Sherry, Larry Sherry.
Larry Sherry and Norm Sherry, right.
And
that's true.
1, 2, saved 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, ethnicity and race play a big role in the Dodgers story. And you can't take, whether Rickey was money grubber, a phony, a hypocrite, and many of the local sports writers thought he was. They called him El Cheapo, Mahatma. Mm-hmm. They thought he went overboard. He took too much credit for Jackie's signing. I think he deserves all the credit and a little cash too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But
absolutely, I agree with you.
Not the motivation; it's the outcome. And what Jackie did was transform America. And and I'm sure Ron agrees with me on this, that Jackie should have been awarded a position in baseball after retirement. He was such a genius in such a competitor. He could have been a coach. Right. He could have been a manager. He could have been a general manager. And the tragedy is he never got the opportunity.
He never got the opportunity. And he wanted to. He would have
Yes.
loved it. He would have
Yes.
loved it. I got a letter from him one time where he was saying that that chock full of nuts, they were thinking of investing money in a new baseball team, new league, and he thought at first that he was getting kind of excited about it, that he would be able to be involved in baseball again, and then they felt that it was too far away from a business that they were in. But he told me that he was very excited. But they didn't do him right. The Dodgers did not do Jackie right. When they traded him to the Giants, it was the biggest disgrace, slap in the face.
Well, that was O'Malley. That's O'Malley again.
Yeah, O'Malley, sure, it was O'Malley.
O'Malley, of course.
It was. Sure, it was. It was. It was O'Malley. And you ever?
And Rachel Robinson
Rachel?
never forgave the O'Malleys for what they did.
No, never did.
Yeah.
She made peace with Peter O'Malley, and I think Jackie did too. Yeah, but Walter they had no use for. Right. Do you ever hear from Rachel, Joe?
As I told you, I ran into her at this premiere at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. We exchanged pleasantries. You know, I had a very embarrassing moment with her at 1997. I was so nervous. The person who was supposed to introduce her didn't show up. President of the college went to France, and someone else copped out. So here I was, thrust into the position of MC, and I introduced Roger Kahn to speak before her. And she said, I said, Rachel, would you like to say something? And she said, no, not after Roger Kahn. So about 4 months later, I went to Carnegie Hall to honor Paul Robeson. She was there. And I gave her a copy of my book. And I said, Mrs. Robinson, do you remember me? She said, how could I forget you? You're the guy who forgot to introduce me at the Jackie Robinson conference. So I hit my head in shame. He enjoyed a laugh at my expense.
Yeah.
That woman, she belongs in the Hall of Fame.
She's going to be. She's going to be. They're inducting her this year. She's going to be.
Oh, I didn't know that. I just got my Hall of Fame book. I didn't see it.
Yes. In the induction weekend.
Wonderful. Well deserved.
She's going to be
deserved.
Yeah. If there's any way I can get out there, I would love to.
I should be the last guy to tell two Jackie Robinson scholars this short but interesting story, because I know both of you have heard it. But when Branch Rickey sent Clyde Sukforth to look at Jackie Robinson in Kansas City when he played for the Kansas City Monarchs, Clyde Sukforth was supposed to go out there for about 2 or 3 weeks, watch Jackie, talk to him, et cetera, and come back and give him the lowdown. And when Clyde Sukforth came back to talk to Mr. Rickey, he said, let me open up the conversation by saying, anybody who's interested in Rachel and is going to marry Rachel is the perfect guy for this plan.
Right.
That's how impressed
I didn't know that.
Clyde Sukforth was of Rachel Robinson.
She's a magnificent
Ricky
lady.
Smiled and said, perfect.
Yeah.
That was the first thing he reported. Not how fast he was, not how his arm was, not how he hit the curveball. He mentioned Rachel first. He said, anybody who's in love with Jackie Robinson, if Rachel Robinson is in love with Jackie Robinson, we got to sign this guy because she's a saint.
She is.
Wow.
She is. She's a phenomenal lady. She's such a phenomenal lady. What she's done for kids throughout this country with that foundation, it's just magnificent. It's such an honor to know her, and to, I feel so proud to know her. She, I met her, Joe, I don't know if you knew this, in 1997. It was the 50th anniversary, and she was invited by the Minnesota Twins.
It's in the film.
Presenting. Yes, that's right. It's in the film. You're right. What am I thinking about? That's right, exactly. You're right. And she was so thrilled to meet me. I had never met her before. What a gracious lady. Just tremendous. And Sharon was wonderful, too. Yeah, it was just great. That's right. It's in the film. I'm an old cocker. See, I forget these things.
I remember that story when you went up to Rachel and you said, "I'm Ron Rabinovitz." She said, "You're Ronnie Rabinovitz?"
Yeah. And she hugged and kissed me, and she says, "Oh my God, Jack loved you so."
That
much.
must have been a thrill.
That was such a thrill.
What's the second recollection that you have
of Rachel, or of what?
Yeah, no, you were going to say two things about the Jackie Robinson saga.
The foundation is so outstanding. They do such wonderful work. Minority students that are graduating there, they get a full boat 4-year scholarship, but they have to pay forward. They have to be in public, community service and stuff. I've met several of these kids here in Minnesota who've been going to St. Thomas, University of Minnesota, and others. And they're just magnificent kids, just fabulous.
I'd like to chime in with another anecdote that is not well known.
Please.
I met Monty Irvin and Ed Shaw. We were on a panel together with the late Frank DeFord in Atlantic City. And afterwards, we had a celebration. It was the Pop Lloyd Conference, annual conference in Atlantic City. And I'm sitting with Monty Irvin at the same table. We're chatting. And then his daughter, Pamela Irvin, comes over. And she says, Jackie was not the first one that Branch Rickey approached to play for the Brooklyn Dodgers. I said, what are you talking about? She said, my father had a great deal of difficulty in World War II. He was deployed in England, and he had racial problems with his own commanding officer because the British women were very attracted to the black soldiers. And so he was told in no uncertain terms not to fraternize. And anyway, it turns out that Monty may have had some kind of nervous breakdown when he returned from World War II. So Monty's wife intercepted the letter from Branch Rickey and tore it up. And Monty never got that letter.
No kidding. I never knew that.
Look magazine had a story that rather than put the onus on Jackie, one person, Rickey had a thought to invite several black players from the Negro Leagues to be signed at one time and then reconsidered. And apparently Monty Irvin, it was in the Negro Leagues at least, statistically, sabermetrically a better player than Jackie. He had 398 in the 1946 Negro League, and they beat Satchel Paige's Kansas City Monarchs 4-3 with Max Manning and Leon Day, the two-star pitchers. And so both Larry Doby, who was the second baseman on that team, and Monty Irvin, who played short and also outfield. Imagine a keystone combination, Larry Doby and Monty Irvin. Well,
oh my God.
Actually, later on, Monty Irvin was in the target, in the spectacles, if you will, of the scouts. But Rickey wisely thought it was best that other teams, like the Giants, integrate more fully. So and Monty was older, of course. When he joined the Giants in '49, I believe he was already 28 years old, as Jackie was when he joined the Dodgers.
Right.
So anyway, that's a fascinating story.
It is.
It's sort of buried in conversation, and it hasn't been put forward.
I have
very interesting.
I have a personal story about Monty Irvin. When Monty Irvin first started working in the commissioner's office in New York City, my brother Paul at the time was an investment banker, and he handled Monty Irvin's investments and knew him. And I, at the time, was a very young teacher in the Newark school system here in New Jersey, and I wanted to get into baseball announcing, and I made some tapes. And my brother Paul asked Monty Irvin what I should do with the tapes, and Monty Irvin suggested that we all go to dinner and have some drinks and talk it over, and he would give my tapes to the powers that be. And we did. We, in fact, met in New York City, my brother Paul, Monty Irvin, and myself. We went to a steakhouse. We had some cocktails. We talked baseball. We ate dinner. I gave him my tapes, and he said he would get back to me. And 3 weeks later, I got a personal letter from Monty Irvin thanking me and my brother for the dinner, and he was sorry to say that he had misplaced my tapes. So the tapes were lost. I never became Vin Scully II. And that's the way that was.
We have something in common. I started my academic career in Newark. I taught at Newark State College, now Keene University, in 1964. And I used to pass by Rupert Stadium on the way. It was still, I think they turned it into a theater. And
I don't know. I played at Rupert Stadium. I played
the one that was right next,
Stadium. Yeah,
right on
Bears.
On Bears, yeah. I also went to a Newark Bears game in Newark a few years ago when we had a conference of the Negro League, Larry Lester's group.
Different stadium, but a very nice stadium too, right?
Yeah. What the saddest thing about Newark, and I have a lot of family who lived in Newark. In fact, my cousin, the dentist, was in Newark. Is that there were more people selling hot dogs and beer than in the stands. And it was really sad because Newark was such a hotbed. In fact, the Newark Bears of 1937 were probably better than most major league teams.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
And
one of the greatest teams ever assembled.
Yeah, with Oscar Vitt as their manager.
Yeah, there you go, Oscar Vitt.
Yeah. So what happened to your career as a budding sports announcer? What did you do?
I now have a podcast called The Tale of Two Cities, Brooklyn to Los Angeles. I team up with a guy, you might have heard of him, Ronnie Rabinovitz.
Oh, well,
that's where
good.
I've gotten.
From this you make a living, though, to use a Jewish question? Can you earn a living?
That reminds me of that wonderful, wonderful joke where the guy gets hit by the cab in New York City and he's lying in the street and the guy takes his jacket off and rolls it up, puts it under his head, and the EMT comes. Are you comfortable? And the guy says, I make a living.
Right. That's in one of my articles, that joke. I just finished an article on Jewish jokes. So I think that's one of them, one of the prize ones.
You have some tremendous humor, Joe. You have some tremendous humor. Yeah,
it's the only way we can survive hard times.
That's right.
That's right.
My joke with the producer of this show, Ralph Zig Tycho, I told Ralph when I first met him that all I said was, 2 Jews, 3 opinions.
Right.
He laughed for 20 minutes.
And there's a punchline on that line. 4 opinions, one of them is a schizophrenic.
There you go.
That's so great.
Yeah, we ought to have another podcast on comedians who traveled from Brooklyn to California because
you know what? If I can hook you up with Ralph Tycho, he definitely would have you on his show, and he would talk all night about Jewish comedians from New York to the West Coast. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
He is well versed.
Yeah.
He is well versed.
Well, you know, I can't thank you enough. I've been in a dark place for 4 months now fighting cancer. But let me tell you guys, you've given me a cause, and you've given me illumination, and I could see light at the end of this dark tunnel. And talking baseball with 2 very knowledgeable, caring people has really been a tonic. So, as another Jewish said, cancer schmancer a big isn't, which means as long as you have your health, not the cancer.
Okay.
That's right.
Well, I want to thank you for being our guest tonight. I really learned a lot from you, and I wish you good health. I wish thank you.
And
I wish you good health. And,
thank you.
And you're welcome. You're very welcome. And on these kinds of podcasts, the mere thing the mere act of just hanging up your phone ends the show. So I'd like to thank Ronnie, and I'd like to thank you as a wonderful, wonderful guest. And keep your chin up, keep fighting, and we'll be thinking about you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Come back again. Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
you,
absolutely.
Thanks.
Good night.
God bless you. Okay. Bye-bye.